This is Lobby Concessionals, the movie podcast where nobody's right and everybody is wrong. I'm Parker, and that's Brendon. Welcome back. Follow us along, like and subscribe, yada, yada, yada.
The likes, especially now. Hit the little thumbs up button, guys.
We really want the likes?
Apparently.
Apparently that's
the thing.
the YouTube gods.
The YouTube gods.
Okay.
A sacrifice of a nice thumbs up.
Yeah.
Just hit it, guys.
Yeah, that's all we need.
It'd be great if you took the 0.9 seconds out of your day.
Yeah.
To just
Yeah. Speaking of gods, I figured we just launch straight in. And
how long have you been holding on to that?
Literally not at all. Which is weird because I kind of set myself up for it. So it sounds like I was.
Yeah.
It's probably even a bad intro.
It's not terrible.
Anyway, we're doing an after credits this week, so we wanted to take a look at Thor: Love and Thunder. Obviously, I went and saw it right away.
We don't want to look at it. But.
Oh, I don't like. I am here to talk about it for sure. I'm stoked about talking about it.
Okay, here we go. How do you want to do this?
So for context, you and I saw it separately.
Yeah.
What was your experience? Let's just start with that.
What do you mean, like in my experience? Like that?
Well, so I went to an IMAX show. It
you
was
went to an
pretty
IMAX.
packed.
Okay.
I went on a Thursday night, like basically the first show I could go to. So it was as packed as it's going to be with MCU fans, more or less.
We had a weird experience. We went to it was a 3:30 show on the Thursday.
Oh,
which is earlier than the first show usually, right?
Yeah. Typically, I think the first is usually
7. 7 o'clock.
I have heard that they are doing those shows, but I assume it wasn't that packed then.
It was packed. It was packed,
really?
but we were in a theater with those premiere seats, the new at Landmark with the heated seats and all that stuff. The double recliner, so like your feet and your headrest.
Oh yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was busy. It was busy, but it was a weird MCU experience.
Because of that, or because of the movie?
Because of the movie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess just address the elephant in the room. I was disappointed. Are we on the same page here?
But there's some hyperbole on my end.
What do you mean? What?
Do you
want me to set you up? What do you?
No. I just don't know if I wanted to just rail into it right away without giving you a chance to just be like semi okay with it.
Okay, so you want me to talk first?
Yeah. Okay. Let's do
okay.
That. Yeah.
So I was overall disappointed. Obviously it's an MCU movie. I enjoyed it. It was fun. There was some funny bits in it. There's some.
We're gonna cut this off with a big spoiler warning.
Oh, right, man, meant to do that. Yeah, we are going to spoil the movie. Like we're not gonna hold back from any of those. So if you are concerned about that, stop watching or jump ahead 20 minutes, half an hour.
Yeah, this is an in-depth review with spoilers.
Yeah. I don't know how in-depth a review it will be. I'm just gonna sort of talk around it. But anyway.
Yeah.
There's some great bits in it. There was some funny moments that I really enjoyed. I found that Love and Thunder never really seemed to it always understood that its core audience is kids. And so I appreciated that in some ways, that it sort of seemed to keep going back to some of that.
Sure.
After Doctor Strange, it felt like it was a little bit darker. It clearly wasn't aimed at 8-year-olds. So I felt like Love and Thunder jumped back from that, and I was happy with it. I was happy it was a little more fun, a little more exciting. Even some of the, again, from an 8-year-old's perspective, scarier portions really weren't that scary. But that was one of the biggest gripes I ended up having then, is just the fact that 10 times out of 10, this movie goes for the gag.
Yeah.
So it never gives you an opportunity to build up any sort of feeling or emotion or anything for any of the characters, there's no stakes. Because the gag is always there. Yeah. Even with Gore, the villain played by Christian Bale, there's a moment where he is terrifying children. And he's doing that because he is terrifying. And it makes sense. But he also makes jokes, or maybe not quite jokes, but what he is doing is ultimately funny, at least for the audience. Maybe not for those children in that cage that he's, kidnapped. But like I laughed.
Yeah.
And it's weird. It's weird that I'm laughing when he is ultimately supposed to be a terrifying villain.
Yeah.
I was surprised with the length. That it was only 2 hours.
It felt longer.
It might have been a little bit less even. And I wish we had seen more of Gore, given that I was quite happy with him, other than maybe, the gags. I felt like it didn't have the heart of Ragnarok, which was really surprising because I kind of expected that Ragnarok was was going to be the inferior of the two, because I figured that they didn't really trust Taika with Ragnarok, so they just sort of were like, well, we'll give you this property because no one cares about Thor. The movies haven't been performing amazing, so just make sure that he's at this point by the end of the movie, and then just let him do whatever he wanted. But I felt like he'd have more control and more leeway and maybe more money, I guess, to do what he wanted with Love and Thunder. And I don't know, maybe he did, and he just didn't deliver. Maybe some of those constraints were good for him. I don't know. But I would say the general feeling was disappointment. I walked out kind of going, oh man, if this is really where the MCU is, and this is the movies that are going to continue to be put out, I'm probably going to eventually stop watching.
Yeah.
And yeah, I find that it's a little bit true with some of the TV shows as well. I've been enjoying them in general, but I think partially I enjoy them because I get 45 minutes of MCU content on a weekly basis. Yeah. But it's less to do with them being truly groundbreaking or really well done. There's been some specific moments I think probably from each of the shows that I would pick out and go, oh, this was worthwhile.
Yeah.
Like as an example, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the moment where what's his name, John Walker or something?
Yeah.
Did I nail it?
You nailed it.
Where he kills the civilian with the shield, I thought was powerful and moving. And I thought the end of that series was powerful and moving. Like the first reveal as with Sam Wilson as Cap. I thought there were some good moments there. But the stuff that surrounded it was okay and fine, but not astounding.
Yeah.
And again, very similar vibes here. So if this is the level of quality we're getting used to, then I don't know. I think I would lose a little bit of interest in the MCU.
Yeah, that's crazy to think about that you would.
Well, and let's be very clear, we're probably still 5 years removed from that. Like they can put out 5 more years of content at this level of quality before I stop watching.
So not at all, really.
No, not really. But but we've talked about this before about how out of I think there's 28 MCU films now, and then hours and hours of TV now. Out of all of that content, I would say there's probably only, if I'm being really, really, if I'm giving them more slack, there's probably 10 movies that really stand out as good and stand out from the pack, while the rest of them sort of and there's like 2 or 3 really bad ones, and then everything else is sort of in the middle. And we've talked about this. They maintain a level of quality that we've come to expect. And I would put Love and Thunder right in the pack there. I wouldn't put it as like bad and outright, offensive to my senses or anything. But I don't see, like, if I had to pick an MCU movie to rewatch, it's not going to be at the top of my list by any means.
No. Not even close.
Actually, sorry, a good analogy, I guess, for what I thought of Love and Thunder All In was the first time I saw those screaming goats, I thought they were funny. The second time, I also thought they were funny. The third through 30th time, it definitely lost its appeal. And that was the general vibe of the whole movie, is I felt like it was, to quote Bilbo Baggins, too little butter spread over too much bread.
Holy shit.
It's just,
look at you.
There wasn't enough. For to hold me. Yeah.
That's actually pretty in depth. I didn't think you were going to go that deep.
With the Bilbo Baggins thing?
No, I mean just in general. Just in general. I didn't think you were going to give that all away right off the top.
Wow, so now you're disappointed you let me go first?
No, because I still think you're gonna have a lot to talk about after I spew my garbage.
Yeah. So sorry, is there anything here that you would disagree with, or that?
No,
I'm
gonna. Yeah, okay. I think I'm gonna cover most of it, to be honest.
Do you have a speech prepared? Are you gonna like pull out a thing? No, like you're freaking me out here.
Well, it was weird because like I oddly enough, the first thing I did when I got out of the theater, I was like, oh man, Parker and I are gonna have. Either he's going to absolutely love the shit out of this thing, and we're gonna have to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Or it's gonna be like a weird funeral.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like there's a little bit of that because at the end of the day, honestly, coming out of that theater, between this and what I'm kind of watching on the TV stuff on the TV side, that movie might have been the nail in the coffin for me.
Oh,
yeah,
for the whole MCU.
For the whole MCU.
Wow.
And then, like, being 5 years removed from where you think you're going to end up, that's not bad considering our levels of love of it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
On a scale. But at some point, it's just like, you're a parody of yourself. That movie, right? Like, it feels like it's satire. I don't know if it's satire anymore. I don't know if it's a parody. It's certainly... I didn't find most of it funny. The theater experience I mentioned earlier, the thing that was weird is that nobody laughed.
Oh, really?
We had a dead silent theater for most of it. I laughed out loud once, and it was a weird throwaway line. And so, like, even the stuff that was supposed to be funny, I didn't laugh, but I laughed at the maybe your arm is in Valhalla.
Oh, yeah.
Just a weird throwaway line that he whispers under his voice, and I was like, for some weird reason, that got to me.
Yeah.
And nothing else did. And your goat thing was pretty spot on because it just felt like he took three things that were super funny or that he would be super good at, and he just rotated it. Yeah. By the end of the movie, I don't even know which Guns N' Roses songs he uses anymore because he keeps using the first 15 seconds of a Guns N' Roses song.
Yeah. So
I'm like, at one point, I'm like, and I love Guns N' Roses. And so the problem is like, is this Paradise City? And how do I not know it?
Yeah.
It felt like he just kept digging back into his bag of tricks and going through it. You're right about there not being any stakes because everything is trying to go for gags. Mm-hmm. So even serious things like I God Butcher and Cancer aren't good enough to keep me motivated for the rest of the film.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so even those lighthearted moments are undercut by funny gag bits. Mm-hmm. And I think the gore stuff would have been extra terrifying had the rest of the movie not been funny. You know, like if he's doing the weird laughing bit, and I know which bit you're talking about, where he's sitting in the thing and he rips the thing's head off, and he does the creepy stuff. That's extra creepy if the movie is not as funny as it is, or is supposed to be as funny as it is.
Yeah, I could see it. Like I think about Infinity War, I guess. Yeah. And there is still laughs in that movie.
Yeah.
And there's still a number of them.
Yeah.
So they I think they managed to put brevity and humor into that film while ultimately still making it a sobering experience.
Yeah.
A movie that you're supposed to take seriously.
Sure.
And that's not the case here at all.
No.
It's been probably a month since we had CJ on this podcast, but CJ, actually, who I saw it with, said to me that he found that it really seemed, the movie seemed transactional in that they went from point A to point B, they did the thing at point B, then they went to point C, they did the thing there, then they went to point D, and he was just like, there's no other puzzles or problems or anything else. No. It's just like, here's the path we have to take and let's do that thing. Yeah. So again, it feels like a transaction. We're going to the grocery store, we're picking up bananas, we leave.
Yeah.
You know, and then I need to stop by the, I don't know, clothing store. This analogy is falling apart.
No, I get it though.
But it's just not, there wasn't a lot to it. No. And so really the only thing that gives this movie depth is like moments that should have heart that don't.
Yeah.
And then the humor. And the humor is like I laughed. In the theater I was in, I would say people laughed at the points they were supposed to. Like we didn't have any weird awkward silences or anything. So I think generally people were enjoying it. The difference is a little bit though too. I was in IMAX and it's quite loud.
Fair enough.
So I do think that we weren't hearing quite as much as the laughter. So maybe if you're in a theater that they keep the sound levels a little bit lower than they tend to in IMAX, you'd notice if the whole theater isn't laughing. Maybe I just didn't. But we didn't have, the infamous hooting and hollering from MCU fans because of something cool happening.
Sure. Maybe that was just my that 3:30 crowd isn't just isn't built for Taika Waititi movies.
No, I don't think the 3:30 crowd is built for much, honestly. I did have a few people try and clap at the end of the movie.
Oh, you try.
Well, they tried because they clapped a couple times and they realized no one else was doing it, and then they sort of looked at each other and realized they were doing it and tried to continue to be like, well, you're doing it, so look, I'll keep it up, and then realized no, this is pathetic, and stopped. So that was weird. For the record, the cheering and the clapping and the hooting and hollering as a thing in movies, I don't hate. I'm not totally against it. I'm just, it can be a little strange and can be a little cringe, in situations like this where I find the movie was underwhelming. Again, I loved the hooting and hollering and the cheering in Endgame when kind of you could feel the energy of the whole room.
Oh, but you want those moments reserved for that.
Exactly. So I'm like, well, why are we clapping at Love and Thunder? They had screaming goats.
Yeah.
That was the groundbreaking thing. And sorry, that's unfair. This is probably the to say it in a weird way, the gayest Marvel movie I've seen.
Yeah.
And I think that's worth celebrating. I think that there was some representation there that was potentially worthwhile. It's a little strange that some of that LGBTQ plus representation comes from a talking rock, but I don't hate it.
Yeah.
There is some like queer vibes you get from I think that's fine to say. From Valkyrie.
They were more upfront about it this time around.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, much better than how they handled things in Ragnarok. So like there was some cool things. I did see there's a Maori guy that was talking about how much he loved Love and Thunder, and he was talking about that on TikTok.
Sure.
And because of some Maori representation, which was great, So absolutely props for those things, but those things does not a good movie make.
No, and I think it's tough. I think especially when I sit and think about it, the best character growth and development in that movie is Stormbreaker.
Okay, actually, now that you remind me of that, some of those Stormbreaker bits were actually funny.
Yeah,
I did really appreciate some of those jokes.
They didn't make me laugh, but again, I'm like, you guys spent a lot of time developing a character for this inanimate object. And you didn't do that with your actual characters. There's a moment at the beginning where Thor's grandstanding in the middle of battle, and fucking Star-Lord and Drax roll their eyes, and I didn't realize that was going to be me the rest of the movie. Because that's what it felt like. Now they get to fuck off and leave after 15 minutes, but now we're the Guardians of the Galaxy, and we got to watch Thor kind of do his thing, and it becomes eye roll inducing at points because there is no. The thing that I missed, and I didn't think I was gonna miss, was Loki, because Loki is the perfect straight man in a lot of those things, and a lot of times, a lot of the softer tones come from Loki. He slows the movie down when it needs to be slowed down. A lot of the character moments, like their relationship together, he brings a lot of that, and I think losing Loki in this movie feels like you just kind of everything else got turned to 11 because there's not that one guy being like, hey, everybody relax.
Yeah. I don't know if this movie would have been improved with Loki.
No, I don't think so. I think he helps. I think he would have helped, but I don't know if he would have saved it.
it's interesting too, because I find after having watched Love and Thunder, I think I probably appreciate Ragnarok a little bit less now. In particular, I felt that some of Thor's behavior, in terms of his character arc throughout the series, he seems zany and a little unhinged in Ragnarok. And from a practical point of view, from a real world point of view, my understanding is that's because Taika wanted to make Thor a little more goofy and give Chris Hemsworth an opportunity to be goofy and be silly and be fun, as opposed to trying to be serious all the time. But in character, I always kind of looked at it as this is his way of coping with grief and loss. And there's he had lost multiple. He had been dumped by Jane Foster in Ragnarok. He had, or before, he had lost his mom the movie previous as well. He lost his dad at the start of that. And so he's sort of coming to terms, and I think it some of it just I just looked at it as coping mechanisms. And but theoretically, at the start of this film, he's like gotten over that as much as you can get over the loss of your home, the loss of your family. And I think that the fact that he's still the same dude, like exactly the same,
not even exactly worse.
Probably turned up to 11. It cheapens it a bit for me. And again, maybe I'm assigning meaning to something that was never intended that way.
I don't think so. I think you're on track too, and especially like if you think about where he is in Endgame after losing everybody and thinking it's his fault.
Sure.
Right? So that he should even be worse off. So coming out of this thing, if they had spent even just a little bit of time with him and the actual Guardians or him with the Avengers where he refines his family and that's him coming out of it, I think I would have been a little bit more okay with it. Yeah. But it doesn't happen. Or at least we don't see it. It's inferred.
Yeah.
But it doesn't happen.
Yeah. Speaking of the finding his family thing, like there is elements of that, like he's spending more time with Korg and Valkyrie and obviously then Jane. And I think that's CJ's wife, Shannon, actually mentioned the fact that she's been upset about the treatment of women or the way women have been used in recent Marvel movies. Sure. Basically just that Jane comes down to being, motivation for Thor effectively in this movie. And I don't know if I quite agree with all of that sentiment. But I guess really what it comes down to for me is I wanted more of Jane Foster. And I understand that she has cancer and that's pulled directly from the comic. And I appreciate what they're doing with that storyline. But frankly, I would have liked if she had stuck around for another movie at least. Or we had got an opportunity for their relationship to build back up. Yeah. And then, maybe kill it off in the next one if we need to. Yeah. I understand on some level why they may have done some of these things. I don't think Natalie Portman really wants to stick around in these movies. And it was great to see Jane Foster Thor at all. So, I can't really be too upset, I guess. But it is strange. It's strange that basically the character of Jane Foster Thor is supposed to be a little bit of his like, women can do anything. Yeah. But the ultimate message is, but they can't because they have cancer. It's a weird way of giving us that message.
And I think I spend the movie fighting my urge to say that she's shoehorned in there into the movie. Like, I get she's a big part of it. Sure. But because the expediency of how that story gets told is like she has cancer, the Hammer talks to her, and I'm like, what are we talking about here? It's like, why? Like, I get it. Like, he has that moment where he's like, you have to take care of her while I'm away or whatever like that. And the Hammer imprints him. I'm just like, but all of that feels so quick. Yeah. It feels so quick that it happens. Like, and within, it feels like within 20 minutes, Thor runs into Thor already. Yeah. And then and then there's just an acceptance of it. And then we go through a whole bunch of things, and then she goes away. Yeah. Right? I have a hard time justifying the inclusion of her because of the way she's used.
Yeah, I would agree. I loved in the comics that Thor literally hands off. Sorry, Thor Odinson literally hands off the title of Thor to Jane Foster. Yeah. And he is still the Odinson, and he still acts as a hero, but he doesn't have another weapon. He doesn't have Stormbreaker. Yeah. He's just fighting with his fists, basically. And so, and the reason he does that is because he's no longer worthy. He literally can't carry Mjolnir anymore. Yeah. So I appreciated that, and I appreciate the fact that Jane steps in to take the mantle of Thor, not because she wants to, but literally because she has to. Yeah. And that even though she realizes that being Thor is killing her, it's making the cancer treatment not work. Yeah. No one else can do that job. Yeah. And so I think it would have been nice if that was the way this was handled. Focus, if maybe, I wouldn't even mind it if we had a Thor movie that basically didn't have Chris Hemsworth in it. Yeah, if this movie starts with him with the Guardians and then they just go off and he joins them and we flip back to Earth and now it's Jane Foster. Yeah. And, we touch back in, obviously, with Chris Hemsworth later on and stuff. But I wouldn't have minded if it was effectively her movie. Yeah,
and I think that's exactly where I wanted it to be. Yeah. Like, you could have told all of those things and have Hemsworth be a little bit of a side character as opposed to the character, because I find he's a fine actor. He's not bad at all, but I think when he turns up that comedic stuff, I think it's too much when it's front and center. I think Ragnarok was a great balance. Yeah. But I think partially that's because we have Bruce Banner in there, we have Loki in there. There's other characters to focus on, and we're being introduced to Korg. Now, granted, Korg shouldn't be front and center either, but I do think that there's enough going on with the other characters. I also thought it was interesting just that there's effectively no character arcs for any of these people. Like Valkyrie doesn't get an arc. She has an arc in Ragnarok. Yeah. But she doesn't really. There's nothing really that happens with her that furthers that character. Yeah. Jane Foster Thor comes back. She does say "I love you," and so there's a nice moment of like, oh, okay, well, maybe they could have been together another time, another place if they were both more committed. There is an element there where they talk about how their relationship fell apart because they were both scared. Yeah. And I think that's real. If the movie let it be more real, if there wasn't just a gag in there, it'd probably be better. But that's really the only, like, we get an arc of her realizing that this is something she wants. She says she loves him. She dies. Okay. That's weird. Yeah. That's super weird.
And then there's the whole thing of, there not being any stakes, not only in this individual film, but also in, I don't know if they're going to do anything more with Jane Foster afterwards, but there's a post-credit scene with her in Valhalla. Yeah. So it's definitely leaving a door open. Sure. And it's, again, like the refusing to let people die thing that's a problem with the MCU. Yeah. I don't know. Plus, for a movie that features a villain called Gore the God Butcher, there is not a lot of God butchering. Like, there's a lot of butchered gods that he visits a couple. Yeah,
but and I thought he did a great job visually. He looked great.
Oh yeah.
I thought he brought it pretty hard. And the thing is, so I think going back to what you said originally, it's not even a bad movie. Nope. It's just not. Like, it is. It's not. It's sometimes enjoyable, but it's not by any means a bad movie. I just think I'm done with seeing this movie. But it also felt like a movie that I was watching through like a viewfinder. Sure. And each slide had just like Korg telling me what was happening in the slide. And then I'd go to the next slide and it was just jump. And that's what that movie felt like.
Well, and it feels like it should be a rom-com in a lot of ways, or there's rom-com elements. But the last rom-com I saw was the last Lost City with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum.
And every chance you get to plug that movie.
I've plugged it twice. We talked about it once and now again. But the only reason I talk about it now is because I wasn't a huge fan of it. It was fine. It was an okay movie. But it has a far more complete character arc and far more complete character stories and, frankly, more heart than this movie does, simply because they refuse to let it be a rom-com. They refuse to let it divorce itself from the MCU formula enough to just Let them actually fall in love. Let them have a relationship. We don't need to see people punching each other for. There's actually not even that much of that. But
There's not.
Like, I don't know. I appreciated the Russell Crowe cameo. Some of that bit was quite funny.
Yeah.
But if we could have actually had moments of relationship between Jane Foster and Thor, instead of that, I would have taken it 100%.
And even the Russell Crowe stuff. I mean, I'm a big Russell Crowe guy in terms of him being an absolute parody of himself sometimes. And this would have been really funny had the rest of the movie not tried to be so funny.
Yep.
And it just loses its appeal.
Totally.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's, again, not a bad movie, but definitely not what I wanted.
Yeah.
This was the MCU property I was most looking forward to this year, I think. And I was pretty disappointed. I would definitely put it below Doctor Strange too, personally.
Yeah, I would.
We'll still see what happens with, I think the only other movie we're getting this year is Black Panther.
No, we get the Marvels.
Is that this year still?
I don't know anymore.
I thought it might be February.
Yeah, I think it might get pushed. But I think that's the next two.
But least. I can't even really be excited about Black Panther because we know nothing still.
Yeah.
So I think disappointed is probably just the best way to put everything. Is that I've walked out really. I was really excited and really, really hoping this was going to be Thor Ragnarok 2, and then it just wasn't that.
No.
It didn't have the same appeal, didn't have the same heart.
Yeah, and the fact that I think I'm at the point where the next one I'd be even remotely interested in would be like Blade. That's where I'm at.
That's far down the line. Too,
yeah,
dude.
like I got nothing else. I don't think I have anything else. I mean, I think I'm gonna if She-Hulk done well. She's one of my favorite characters. I'm excited for that. I don't even want to say excited. Nervous about that. Which is a feeling, I guess. But yeah, everything else I could do without at this point. I'm done.
That's weird, man. I do have to say, just a quick note. I did think the black and white sequence I enjoyed. I thought it was strange for a MCU movie, but I think it looked quite cool. And so, from a visuals point of view and from a sequence point of view, I think it was cool for that to be there. But I literally can't think of what they did that filled 2 hours now when I think back. Because not enough happens of consequence.
No.
Or not enough happens that I cared about, really. Even though some of the things were cool. Like, again, even this black and white sequence. That was cool. They did a cool thing. But like,
it just feels like you're talking yourself into liking it.
No, that's what I mean. That was a cool thing they did. But I would still rather have, got I don't know, Thor and Jane Foster going on a date or something. Like, again, given the fact that this seemed very clear to me that they were trying to make a rom-com.
Yeah.
As far as an MCU movie can be a rom-com. I just wanted this, let it be an actual rom-com then. Just buy into it a little bit more. And they just never give us that. There's the one moment on the boat where Jane and Thor actually have a chance to chat,
and they undercut it.
And they
fucking shit bit.
They undercut everything. That's what I mean. It's like every single time there's a moment where you could potentially start feeling something, they go for the gag.
Yeah,
and it's not rewarding.
No,
there's
no payoff there. But it also feels like a placeholder movie. It does. We're in between knowing what this phase is leading up to.
I don't know if it's leading up to anything. That's my understanding as well. Is that Feige has talked about them. They're not going to have another big bad like Thanos.
Oh, I thought there was a rumor going around that they might be doing Secret Wars. Not the 80s one, but the most recent one in 2015.
That was my I believe Secret Wars is happening, but I don't know if it's ever going to be truly an event in the same way. I don't think they're ever bringing everyone together again.
I mean, that would be it though. I'm
just saying. My understanding is it sort of sounds like they're kind of letting people go off on their own a little bit more, and there'll be smaller team ups. But I don't know if we're ever going to get a true Avengers film again.
I think you got to at some point.
I don't know.
Honestly, I bet you it'll depend on whether or not Avatar 2 does well.
Really? What does that have to do with it? I think you're just wanted to mention Avatar 2, but
no, I just think I think there's something to be said about wanting that spot.
Isn't Avatar still at the top?
It is.
I thought they got re-released.
Sure,
and then,
but I mean, there's still lots of times to re-release Avengers movies.
Yeah, but they're not.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it's funny because they're all the same studio now, but like it's still.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Any other thoughts? I've kind of beaten it to death. I think.
No, I think that's the thing too. Is like there's stuff to talk about, but there's not. That which is kind of the problem with that movie. Mm-hmm. So I know. I think I got everything off I needed to get off my chest.
Fair enough. And again, this is part of the problem with the MCU stuff, though. Sorry, I did have another thing. I'm going to talk about it now. This is the issue with the MCU, is I was excited to see Hercules.
Oh, boy. Don't even get me started.
Why not?
I think...
I can't remember that guy's name.
Brett Goldstein.
Brett Goldstein. I'm excited for him.
Kind of, but
he's dope.
Yeah, but he's obviously CG'd to be like 7 feet tall and jacked.
Well, okay. Like, is he not jacked?
He's not that jacked.
Okay, fair enough. But maybe he will be.
Okay.
Right? Like, this is them CGing him, knowing they're going to use him at some point. So it's going to be a couple of years. They're giving him time to get jacked.
I guess so. I think this is where I get a little bit... the comic book nerd takes over a little bit. And you want things to look the way you want things to look good.
Okay.
So I've had a problem with the last couple of years of people fan casting stuff.
Okay.
Just because they think things look right. Which again, it sounds hypocritical, as I just said.
Sure.
I want things to look right.
Yeah.
But I also need them to embody that character. The Krasinski thing to me is a perfect example of it. You and I have talked about it a ton.
Yeah.
He might look the part. I don't see him as Reed.
Sorry, for the record, we're talking about John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic in Doctor Strange.
Yeah, Doctor Strange. I think he looks fine. I don't think he in my mind, he's not the Reed that I would have pictured. The trade-off was Emily Blunt as Susan, which is perfect.
Well, and for the record, neither of these things have been confirmed.
No,
I have actually heard Sam Raimi talked about how those cameos were all 100% fan service, and it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So who knows? What happens when we actually get a Fantastic Four movie. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. I think giving into the fan service part of it, Brett is a great actor. Brett Goldstein is a great actor.
Sure.
And he's got a great looking beard.
Yep.
So we're going to cast him to be 3 feet taller than he needs to be? Like, I don't...
Okay, but who would you cast No one is 8 feet tall.
No, I haven't really thought about it that way.
We're not going to get Shaquille O'Neal.
Oh, as Hercules? I'm in. But that's the thing, right? It's not... Chris Hemsworth is a big dude.
Yeah.
He's theoretically not Thor big. But because he looks the part... He can get away with it.
He's like effectively Thor big. He's massive.
He's massive. Movie. But Thor is really big.
You look back at first Thor, and I was still like, this is convincing. Yeah. And he's nowhere near as big as he is in this movie.
But that's the thing, right? So he's not that far off, so he can pull it off. But I just think when I think of Roy from Ted Lasso, it's not like I'm thinking superhero.
Yeah, but again,
not much less a Greek god.
A few years of steroids and...
Steroids don't make you grow a head.
Yeah, but...
I have no problems. I have no doubt that he's going to get jacked for that role.
Yeah.
He's still going to be... They're still going to have to film him like they filmed Tom Cruise in every one of his movies.
Yeah, and Tom Cruise looks great. So, I'm just saying.
So, yeah.
That works out great in every one of Tom Cruise movies, so...
You can't recast Chris Hemsworth, though. When they fight, it's going to look silly.
I don't know, man. We'll see. Well, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Like I said, it's just nitpicky stuff, but I like the dude a lot. But I just don't see it.
For the record, I'm pissed about the fact that probably the brightest point of Thor: Love and Thunder is the fact that we get Brett Goldstein as Hercules, and that's something it's the tease. Why is that the thing I'm most excited about?
Yeah, especially because we don't know if we'll ever see him again. Really.
Well. It's reasonable we'll see him again.
Yeah, we'll see him. I just don't know in the manner that they set it up for.
You don't know if he's gonna fight Thor?
Yeah, I just don't know if at this point I'm sure Hemsworth will come back and just a dump truck full of money at this point. But
yeah, well, and my understanding is Hemsworth is actually enjoying himself on these films.
Sure,
You know, like it sounds like
at least
a
one of
party.
us is.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like I've seen behind the scenes stuff, but it seems like they're having a good time.
Sure.
And that's great. You
Yeah.
know, like typically I do think that it looks that way. I think some of that fun is communicated.
Yeah.
You know, they did a good job of communicating some of the energy they had on set to the actual film.
Yeah.
And I would say there's chemistry there between some of the cast. In
All
that,
of them, really.
You know,
I think
like
it was
I don't know if I was totally amazed by Natalie Portman in some cases, which is weird because I think she's an amazing actress.
Yeah.
I don't know what the issue was.
She still wants to have to be there for the most part, right?
Sorry?
She still wants to have to be there for the most part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? She might enjoy the company, but it's still the end of the day, it's still 30 takes of her swinging a hammer. So
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah.
All
right, we're gonna end up talking about this.
No, yeah, we have to stop. I'm done.
I am definitely done.
The only other thing I really want to talk about today was Stranger Things, because I was stoked about this season.
You were.
I really, really enjoyed it, and then obviously they delivered in spades for the last 2 episodes.
In spades.
Oh yeah, I think they this is exactly the payoff I wanted.
Oh.
Wow, that is okay, whoa, man, I don't know how I can handle your reaction there.
No, that's good.
Yeah, this is exactly what I expected. You know, like I wanted to see some conclusion of some of this story, but to setting up the fact that there's the next season that we will be receiving is going to be the end of this story.
Sure.
So I didn't really see it going any other way in broad terms, you know.
Okay, yeah, I'll buy that.
From a individual character point of view, like I didn't know what was going to happen to individual characters or what they were planning, or but I kind of expected that Vecna wouldn't die, that
Sure.
he would get confronted and then probably wouldn't actually die, because then they're setting him up as the big bad, the guy behind, you know, the puppet master from the beginning, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, he's not, right? There's still the mind flayer.
No, but like the argument, like he controlled the mind flayer is the
Kind of like it's tough, right? And this is where we'll start. I guess we'll just get right into it.
Let's do it.
There's vagueness.
Oh,
to
also spoilers about Stranger Things.
That.
So
Yeah,
you know,
huge spoilers.
yeah.
There's a vagueness to it, right? Because there's a point where Dustin was like, Vecna's like the lieutenant. Like he's the guy underneath the big bad, and they made a very, very specific. They made sure to very specifically call that out, and then they did the whole Vecna showing up and kind of doing stuff with the mind flayer. So it looks like Vecna's controlling it. So I actually don't know.
Well, and there's a thing where like you see Vecna as a kid. Literally drawing the mind flayer.
Yeah.
You know, like so. There's like, well, chicken and egg sort of thing. I don't know.
No idea. So
but
maybe there's one left.
Either way, the way I'm seeing it is that like it looks to me, basically every other season they've defeated whatever the enemy was, right? And then this one is the one where they didn't.
Yeah.
Now, granted, they defeated the mind flayer by like locking it away. They didn't actually kill it.
Yeah.
Or. Not lock. Yeah, like they just shoved it back into the upside down. So, this like I guess if we don't really see the mind flayer again, I'm not going to be super disappointed. Like I'm okay with Vecna taking the place of the big bad for the rest of this series.
Sure,
personally, I was very disappointed that Eddie dies.
Yeah,
I was not exactly surprised from a narrative point of view. Like. Again, didn't explicitly predict it or anything, but it also like this series has had a habit of basically keeping more or less its core people, and then but any new people they introduce are just dead. You know, Sean Astin is a good example.
Bob.
Oh crap, Max's brother.
Yeah, Billy.
Don't know the actor's name, but either way. This has been a fairly normal thing. That being said, Max was a new character. Oh God, I should have written down everyone's names. Robin was a new character. Yeah. So like, it's not like everyone new that's introduced dies.
Yeah.
But it's not exactly unexpected either. But really disappointed to see him go. Loved the Master of Puppets thing. I think it was sweet what he did. I also think it was awesome his character arc. From running away from problems and deciding that he needed to confront this.
Yeah.
And I loved his relationship with Dustin.
Yeah.
And then what that means for Dustin's relationship with Steve.
Sure.
All of that stuff. So I'm also happy to see that Steve and Nancy are coming back together again, because as far as I'm concerned,
Jonathan's the worst character.
Jonathan is the worst character in the show. So
Yes.
as much as we can do to just stop making him relevant,
Please.
is great for me. So, I had a great time. I do think people talked about the length. I do think that there was the final episode was a little long.
Yeah.
And that struck me where I didn't feel like that for the rest of the season. Like I had basically no problem in 2 days powering through 10 hours of television over those 7 episodes.
Yeah.
And then the last 2, it's only 4 hours of TV, and I watched it in one night, but I did feel that second episode. I'm like, oh yeah, there's a couple bits where you guys could have.
Yeah, and I made the mistake of waiting till it dropped that night and started watching it right away. Both episodes, the final 2. So
at like midnight or whatever.
1 in the morning. It started.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was up to like 5, 6 in the morning.
Yeah,
and that's long.
Yeah,
I mean
it's
and it's not a big deal for me. I'd be up anyways. It's not an exhaustion thing.
Sure.
It's just you really feel it when everybody is sleeping and everybody's sleeping. Kind of a weird feeling like that.
Yeah. So what? You were disappointed with it though? Like,
I don't know,
you kind of reacted.
I don't know that I was completely disappointed. I have issues with some of it for sure. I thought.
Wait, sorry. Stranger Things in general, or these 2 episodes?
Maybe the season as a whole.
Okay,
and that's saying a lot because I'll tell you. I think it's close to my second favorite season of the show.
Okay.
All right. I think the first season's basically untouchable. And
Fair
then on a given any day, season 2 or 4 could be my second pick.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I have a huge drop off. I have really big issues with 3, but that's a different conversation.
Fair enough.
So I quite enjoyed the season. I do have there was a point where I thought, there has to be stakes at some point. So I thought they were going to kill a core character.
Okay.
And I was flip flopping a lot on who that would be and what that would mean. And then there was a scene with Eddie and Dustin. I'm like, oh shit, it's Eddie.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah.
And that was a really tough pill to swallow. And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, if they kill Eddie, that means everybody else should be safe. And then they do the thing with Max.
They sort of killed Max.
Sort of kill Max. And I think my issue with a lot of this is those kids, especially somebody like Max and 11. And I had issues with this at the beginning of the season with 11. Is that they've gone through too much. I think it'd be great if I could get a couple of episodes where 11 isn't crying at some point.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's piling on. And the trauma is you want there to be some kind of a coming out of the other side of it and being like super strong and all that stuff. But the bullying stuff at the beginning is so bad.
Yeah.
It's brutally bad. And we're 4 seasons into this thing where this girl has been basically living under somebody else's thumb or being tortured or all that stuff. It's so much. It's a lot. So much. And then with Max, they spend the entire first half of the season with her trauma and her guilt and all that stuff. And then they kill her.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just like, I wish the pylon was some, like it could be somebody else. Like Mike, who has not done anything for 4 seasons.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe it would mean more as well to boost other characters. I don't know. I don't like the idea of death boosting other characters. But at the end of the day, I felt like that's what Eddie's was as well. Because at the end of the day, would it have mattered if he'd stayed or gone or ran away? For his character, yeah, it made sense to not run anymore. That's the thing that we want to walk away with.
Sure.
But from a timeline standpoint of what he achieves, what does he actually achieve by dying?
Oh, effectively nothing. Like
nothing.
Theoretically, he saves or he keeps the bats from going and attacking.
But they seem
Steve
far enough away as it is.
Maybe
maybe
I guess if looking at his from his point of view as a character, he doesn't know that.
He doesn't know.
Right?
That's
and the
fine.
fact that things like that Steve and Nancy and why can I not remember her name?
Robin. It's
Robin. Oh my god. The fact that they were already screwed because of those tentacles or whatever, he didn't know about, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that his sacrifice doesn't mean anything really, that the bats could have just flown back, it still doesn't matter from the point of view of the character. It's still a heroic sacrifice because he believes he's doing it for this reason, regardless of whether it actually had.
And for his character, I love that for his character, and I also think it gives stakes to Dustin because again, up to this point, Dustin hasn't really lost anything. I mean, yeah, he lost Will for a couple of weeks or whatever like that, and you get him back, things go good for Dustin basically as a character for 4 seasons.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, if you touch Dustin, I will kill you and then myself.
Yeah, or Steve.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Those two, right?
No, I'm okay with Steve suffering a bit though.
Sure.
I am not okay with Dustin suffering. He is innocent and adorable.
Yeah. So I get maybe now Dustin knows it's a real thing. It feels like a real thing because he spent 4 seasons being the guy to come up with the plan or figure it out.
Yeah.
And then go head first without any repercussions. Right? If you think about, he's like, found a Demogorgon, just gonna raise him. We found a gate, just go through the gate.
Yeah.
He's always been go first, do first, think about it later. And now he can't. Now he has something to think about because he's actually lost somebody in front of him. So I get it in that sense. I kind of like it in that sense. And I'm glad it wasn't Steve because that's exactly what it could have been at that point. But I just think it's borderline emotionally manipulative, right? Eddie is easily a top 3 make you like a character and then fuck you on TV easily. So I have issues with that.
I think I heard that Eddie's entire character was based off of Satanic Panic stuff from the 90s, and there is a particular court case. A friend sent me this actually. Shout out Butland. But a court case where I think it was 4 guys got life in prison. For apparently killing someone that they were actually innocent of, and they ended up, I think, 20 years later, getting acquitted and then released because of DNA evidence. It might not have been 20 years, might have been a little less. Anyway, but so much it was about someone that was innocent and truly a good person being accused and being treated a particular way because of what someone thought of them, because they had long hair or because they liked skulls, and so I like that from that point of view, and so in terms of it being emotionally manipulative, I think that's powerful, because all he ever did was be an outsider, and that was all he did wrong, and so I appreciate that from even just a moral point of view or for a humanity point of view, but I do hear what you're saying, and I grieve the fact that Eddie is gone. Yeah,
and it's a viewpoint thing, right? I think, again, I think the double-edged sword of it is, like, I wish we would have got more time with Eddie to make that more impactful.
I agree.
But but you could easily make the argument that if you spent more time with him, it's even more manipulative.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like a fine line of what it is, and I think where it bothers me the most is the end when everybody gets back together, because now that cast is too big.
Yeah.
And you cut out characters that are actually good for characters that aren't.
Yeah.
And that's where my problem lies with a lot of it. And we have talked about this off camera, and you slightly agreed and half disagreed with me, is I think they sandbag a lot of their own characters because they don't know what to do with them. I think the West Coast Pizza Crew is a wash. Like, that's just like, hey, let's stick the 4 most boring characters in a van together and get them as far away as from the characters that are doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, boy, every time those guys were on the screen, that was rough for me.
And I didn't hate that in the first 7 episodes, but those last 2, it really, that came home. The only thing they needed, they were just a taxi for Elle.
Yeah. And not even that, it felt like now you're written for convenience, the stoner dude, right? Like, at the end of the day, you really... It felt like you made that character so that they could get that pizza franchise in Nevada, so that you could have a salt bath. That's what, and the fact that you got a car. There's a convenience there too, because he doesn't bring anything else. He
Yeah.
really doesn't.
I think his job effectively is to be a bit of a comic relief character, and
too
that's
much.
all it is.
It's too much.
But there is like those exist,
Sure.
you know, and
Sure.
and that's not unreasonable that he is there for those reasons.
Yeah, I just think it's overload when you have too many of those kind of characters in the season already. I think with Murray, with the Russian, the pilot, the stoner guy. I think there were too many over the top comedic characters. So that it's just the Love and Thunder thing, man. It's just it loses its appeal when there's too much of it.
Yeah, I don't quite see it that way. I think that there was enough going on in enough different areas that I don't hate the fact that character was there, especially because we don't waste time with him, really. He's just there to, you know, drive the plot a bit, but, you know, make things a little bit lighter when they can or when they need to be. So
yeah,
it's
I guess
not
so.
all
Maybe I'm just not into stoner humor either.
Well, and I think part of it is just that some of the Mike and Will stuff was pretty heavy and frankly kind of out of left field, considering that none of that was really hinted at up until now. So I like the fact that there was someone to sort of break some of that tension because...
Well, you gonna trust Jonathan to do that?
Those cold dead eyes, man, they don't do anything for me. But I hear what you're saying, and there's definitely a point to be made there. Again, I think you're probably being a little too harsh, but I get what you're getting at for sure.
Yeah.
But that, you know, the whole Master of Puppets thing and like all of that is forever going to be
it's worth it.
Legendary moment in television.
It's worth. I mean that stuff is really, really good. And like I said, I think the Eddie stuff, I wish we had more time because I think they tease a pseudo relationship with Steve,
sure,
which I thought was super enjoyable. I think him. I even think at the beginning where he's talking with Chrissy in the woods as she's going through her stuff. I think you get glimpses of what he's capable of there.
Yeah,
and then the way he interacts with Nancy and Robin and Dustin. Even I think there's so much to be explored there, and I hate that we got cut off at the knees.
Yeah, I am excited though because I think that this is the best thing that's ever happened to Joseph Quinn, the guy that plays Eddie.
Sure.
And his career is going to just rocket off. So I'm excited to see him play what is effectively Eddie 2.0 in some other project, you know, in a year here.
Yeah, looking forward to him being in the MCU.
Yeah. Oh boy. I really hope they don't put him in that wig again, though. Wasn't a big fan, I'll be honest. That's basically all I had on Stranger Things.
Yeah, that's it too. Again,
Yeah.
it's weird. I think for both things we talked about, they're not bad things. In fact, I thought Stranger Things was my second favorite season.
And as far as I'm concerned, Stranger Things was significately better than Love and Thunder.
Absolutely.
Like I want to let the record show that I am a fan of Stranger Things season 4.
Yeah. And it's like that's one I think I'd go back and rewatch. It made me want to go back and rewatch season 1s through. Maybe, I don't know. I haven't figured that out yet.
That's a lot of TV.
That's a lot of TV, and I'm game for it for the most part. But yeah, it's really enjoyable. And so things bother me. They usually do, as people have probably picked up on when if they listen to the show. I'm a bit of a nitpicky idiot.
Fair enough, man. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to do a rewatch. I'll be honest, there's too much TV on my list, but still got Peaky Blinders to finish up.
You do a lot though,
and We Own This Night. And Severance and Better Call Saul and there's so much. There's so much.
Yeah,
so.
And I just started to rewatch Friday Night Lights.
Oh my god, I'm never gonna hear you shut up about this show.
Never. I was contemplating doing. I think enough time has passed. I was thinking about doing a Game of Thrones rewatch.
No, House of the Dragon comes out really soon.
Yeah,
so
I don't think I'm giving it that. I'll do an episode. I can't imagine myself caring enough.
But you're gonna rewatch the whole original series.
Yeah, I still think the first
God,
three.
You're weird.
I think the first 3 seasons of that is still some of the best TV I've ever watched.
Oh, it's incredible. It's really, really good. But why not? No. I'm not even engaging.
Maybe that's a discussion for a different episode.
Maybe.
Rewatchability of something.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.